There's no reason that oil, if we had plenty of it, shouldn't be at $30 or $40 a barrel. But, we have every single country that produces oil producing as fast as they possibly can. We're absolutely at capacity in most of those countries. There's just a couple that have a little bit of swing capacity. That's Saudi Arabia, Russia to a similar extent, but maybe not quite as much. And here's the thing. Saudi Arabia does have additional oil they can supply, but it's the kind of stuff nobody wants. It's heavy, it's sour, it's nasty stuff. They'll sell you all you want, but people don't have refineries that are tuned to take that grade right now. There are some, but the stuff that we're short on is light, sweet crude, the good stuff. And that tells us where we are in this story as well. So my vision here is that we are absolutely, whether it's this year or 10 years or 20 years, that's a blink of an eye, we are going to be wrestling with a worldwide recognition and then response to insufficient supplies of the type and quantities of oil that we need in order for our financial and economic system to function like we want it to, maybe even like we need it to.
Well, Chris, that's a shocking statistic. Now, you're saying 150 barrels per day, not 150,000 barrels per day are coming out of those Bakken wells? I mean, that's a joke. 150 barrels a day?
Out of each well.
I mean, that's a joke. Okay.
Out of each well. We used to, when we drilled Spindletop or Prudhoe Bay or out in the Ghawar field in Saudi Arabia, a decent well is producing 10,000 barrels a day, maybe as much as 20 or even 30,000 barrels a day. That's a well.
Yeah. Okay, point well taken. All right, well, one of the things that I love about you, too, is that you focus on this ever-expanding credit market in the Federal Reserve and fiat currency. And you've said, I'm going to quote you here, quote, "I've lost faith that our currencies will be managed toward anything but oblivion." So you're well aware of what these central banks have done to humanity and to the sovereignty of the people of this country, as the Federal Reserve pretty much runs the show. Can you talk a little bit about our choice? What ability do we have to take our system back? I mean, I see this as a twofold problem. We've got the energy problem, or this peak oil problem that you're describing, and we also have this fiat currency problem. As to your point, they're probably going to drive the dollar right into the ground. What do people do?
Well, two questions. I mean, if you're asking, what is the larger solution to this, to me that's very simple. You create alternative currencies and let them compete in the free market. So maybe the Treasury issues its own, but states should be allowed to issue their own. In fact, you could issue your own. And if I ended up trusting your currency more than the Federal Reserve's, I would use yours. The Federal Reserve would almost instantly have to behave differently if they had real competition. It's just amazing to me that we founded and have established this idea of capitalism around something that's completely uncapitalistic, which is an utter and complete monopoly on money. And the second point around that is that there's no reason for a country or a people to borrow their own money. Money is it's an artificial creation. It's like borrowing air or something at interest. I mean, it's a piece of paper. It's an idea, right? There's no reason you should have to borrow that into existence. It's not hard to create. It's easy. You hit an enter key on a computer now, and you create as much as you want. So it's just ridiculous that we are still in this day and age, borrowing our own money into existence. And so the way we break that, of course, is that you force the banks and the banking cartel and the Federal Reserve to go into competition, and they will very rapidly have to change their tune. If we don't do that, they will manage that currency into oblivion. That's just what history tells us, and there's no other outcome to this that I can possibly see. Second part to your question, what's an individual do? You have to be. I think everybody has to become aware of the risk that these characters are going to pretty much ruin our currencies, and that it's up to each of us to figure out how we're going to build resilience into our own lives. So for me, that's meant obviously owning some gold and silver is a great way to go. As we're talking today, there's quite a knockdown in the metals prices, so I think we've got a buying opportunity coming up. But I think everybody needs to be more resilient with respect to their energy needs, right? So you can insulate your house, maybe buy a more efficient car, live closer to where you work, just things to insulate yourself from rising energy prices, because I see those as a structural given as we go forward in time. And as well, investing in maybe local food production, whether you have a garden or you work with local farmers or whatever. But just getting your food, having more local food is a great thing to do. And then if you do have money in the markets, if you still have some money left over after you've bought gold and invested in yourself, you do need to find people who can safely navigate the current landscape out there. And anybody who's paying attention knows, given what happened in MF Global, where they just basically stole client funds, to what we see with high-frequency trading, the computer algorithms on Wall Street, which is just patently wrong and unfair, quote stuffing that happens in the sub-millisecond time scale, to what the big banks are actually doing. Listen, anytime humans can create the appearance of a free lunch for themselves and I'm going to use this word, steal instead of earn, they will. That happens all the time. I think it has to be admitted that our financial markets are broken, and you need somebody to help you if you do have money left in them to be exceedingly careful about where and how they're placing your money into that system. And in my world, it boils down to one simple thing. I value being nimble. I want people to be more liquid. I would much rather have funds parked in cash right now than in 30-year Treasury bonds, because I don't trust 30-year Treasury bonds for 30 years. Not a chance. No way am I going to lend the U.S. government money at 3% for 30 years. Are you nuts?
Right.
So you need to find yourself somebody who can help you if you're not fleet of foot and a money manager on your own. You need to find somebody who understands risks, won't look at you like a dog listening to white noise when you say things like, I'm worried about a currency decline. I'm interested in gold. I think that energy might be a place to place my bets. Hey, which institutions do you think would survive a major liquidity clearing event like we had in 2008, and which might fail? And let's make sure my money isn't with the ones that might fail. What would that look like? There are firms out there and there are individuals who can have those conversations with you, but not everybody will do that. I would say less than 1% of the financial industry is prepared to have those conversations because they're still wedded to, and in some cases, institutionally forbidden from talking about anything other than a rapid return to the way things used to be. And that's not going to happen.
I know you're not an economist, but I sure do value your opinion. What do you make of the elections over the weekend in France and Greece? Any chance this marks the beginning of the end of austerity? Does it mark the beginning of the end of the Eurozone? And if so, if the derivatives dominoes start to topple and the money junkies can't get their fix, the IMF and the big banks that put us into this situation, what does that mean? How much time do you think we have left before the dominoes really start to fall?
Well, two things come out of what happened in Europe. The first is that politicians, I was completely surprised that the politicians went for austerity, and they were going for austerity because the banks came to them behind the scenes, twisted their arms, and said, "Listen, if we don't get paid back, in full, that's it. We're going to pull the plug on this whole thing." And so, trust me, none of those politicians who were in power wanted to go for austerity because they knew how unpopular it would be. But fast forward a little bit, here we are, we've just had some elections, and the austerity guys got tossed out. And so politicians are going to look at that now and say, message received, austerity is not only not popular, but it's career-ending. They will be backing away from that. So we're going to see a renewed shift back towards the printing side of things. The second thing around that is that I've never, ever thought that we would ever go down the deflation route because it will be so exceedingly painful if we do. If we have a full massive wipeout of over-leveraged debts, we're going to find ourselves rapidly in a situation where institutions are failing, governments are failing, countries are failing, war becomes more possible, all kinds of really unpleasant things happen. And if it's either that or hit the enter key and print a few more, we'll print a few more. So I'm seeing these elections as a fairly clear sign that we're going to go a little bit further down the road of printing. It doesn't matter that printing hasn't worked at this point. It doesn't matter that printing was what got us into this trouble in the first place. Those are irrelevant details to the architects of all of this. They would instead just prefer to make sure that they can keep things going for another month, a quarter, a year, whatever. They'll keep printing in an effort to do that. As we're doing that, though, printing, my prediction is that the economy, the real one, is still going to be limping along and doing very poorly because guess what? We've never ever had a return to solid structural economic growth with oil at $100 a barrel. Inflation adjusted through all of history, it's never happened. So it would have to be a first time in history kind of an event for us to have a real big recovery with energy prices at these levels. It could happen. It's not entirely impossible, but it's improbable to me. It's very much unlikely. So I'm looking at Europe as a pretty clear warning sign that we're headed towards the next round of QE, LTRO in Europe, whatever those acronyms we want to use, but it's money printing by any other name.
Okay. Well, Chris, you've been very generous with your time. I want to wrap up, and I want to leave everybody with this quote from you and any reaction you might have to it. You've said, if you expect the future to look like the past, you're likely to be disappointed. Why don't you leave the audience with what that means?
I stand by that. For me, the future is actually very exciting. There's extraordinary opportunities coming, and there are challenges too. But for people who are playing the old game, which is close their eyes, cross their fingers, hope that the future just ends up, getting back on track so it can resemble the past, a lot of disappointment there. Investments aren't going to work the same. The types of jobs that were high-paying in the past may not be there or high-paying in the future. There will be all kinds of new opportunities erupting out of the margins that they'll be missing out on. So my story is really one of saying, listen, there's change coming. Could be disruptive, doesn't have to be, but it's change anyway, whether we wish it to be there or not. And so for those who can see that change coming early, they have a better than even possibility of having a very high quality of life, of preserving their wealth, maybe even of growing it, of making the right investment choices, and hopefully of enjoying their life. Because to me, this is not a period to hunker down. The wave is breaking. It's time to surf. So yes, my role in life is to help people see how the future is going to be different and to position themselves for it.
Well, we sure do appreciate everything that you're doing. You've really opened my eyes in a lot of ways, and thanks for schooling me on the peak oil concept. I had questions about it, and you've really helped us level set in the audience, too, I think. Tell folks where they can find you, and please tell us about that book, too, The Crash Course. That's available on Amazon, isn't it?
It is. It's available pretty much anywhere, but if you just the Crash Course and you use my name, Chris Martenson, you'll get right to it. And the website is chrismartenson.com. Martenson spelled Martenson. So chrismartenson.com. And we've got all kinds of free stuff there, what should I do guides, covering a lot of the basic things, forums, a really nice community. And then I also have a subscription newsletter service where we're tracking all of these things in real time as they unfold for people. So those are the two pieces of the website. And if anybody's interested, just come on by.
That's nice of you to join us.
All right, and if people get angry about what I said about abiotic oil, now you know why.
No, they won't. I've got a good audience. They're good folks. Thanks, man.
All right, excellent.
Take
Be
care.
well. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's it, guys. Much more to come. Thanks for tuning in, and visit sgtreport.com for all the latest.